Dave Tobey here, and I thought I'd give a quick tutorial on the very basics of design integration. What do I mean by design integration? Well, design integration is essentially having a HTML design, such as this, which a designer might have created, and integrating it into a SoftSlate store. And so this is a SoftSlate store with some categories. We've already got some products and some images in here. But the template is just using the default look and feel. And obviously we want to make it look nice. We want to brand it with a design. So here we have a design. This is just a straight HTML file along with some CSS styles that a designer provided. And we need to integrate the two. I want to talk about all the resources that are available and some of the techniques for doing this within SoftSlate. Here I've got the project for SoftSlate, the directory structure laid out here. And just as a very quick example, let's talk about customizing some of the CSS styles that come with SoftSlate. All the default styles are right here in a class called base.css. And there's another directory here called custom and another file called custom.css. And it's very basic. If you need to override any of the base styles, you can do that in the custom.css file, and that will override any of the styles. So for example, here back in the design, you notice it's a fixed width design. And actually, if I pulled up in Firebug, we've got this page container div which has a width of 980. So let's just take that as an example. It's probably a pretty common thing that people might want to do, to use a fixed width design. In SoftSlate, if you notice, we've got a div called inner wrapper, which has a default width of 80%. So it takes up 80% of the entire window space, but it's not fixed, it's flexible by default. So what we want to do here is we want to go with a 980 fixed width. And it's basic, pretty basic. Just take the style as defined in the base.css. Override the width, save the file, and back in the store. Now we've got the fixed width of 980 going on. So that's a very basic way to do a customization for CSS. Now obviously that only gets you so far. The markup between the design and the store might be quite different. We use our own markup style. It's based on standard practices for XHTML. In this case, this is more of an HTML5 markup. And there's no real magic tricks here. You just have to integrate the two. But let me show you the mechanics of it. And it's very basic. Underneath this webinf directory and then layouts, the default directory currently is default XHTML. The old directory is called default. That's a legacy directory. And so likely you'll be running it default-XHTML. So these are all the default templates. And for example, to customize it, you again see another custom directory here. And all these subdirectories match the subdirectories under default-XHTML. So you can probably guess how to customize it. You simply copy the file up into the corresponding subdirectory under custom. And now we can open this up and make whatever changes we need to make to the file to alter the markup however you want. So for example, we've got the phone number in there. I'm just going to do this to prove the concept. We can put that in here too. And as soon as you save the file, SoftSlate will know it's there. Reload the page, and now you've got the phone number there. Obviously, we've got a lot of styling and a lot of rearranging to do. I wanted to point out a couple of very key JSP files which affect the overall layout of the SoftSlate store. That's layout.jsp, left layout, and center layout.jsp. Let's take a look at left layout.jsp. As you can see, these layout files are where the actual root HTML tag is contained, and the head tag and the body tag. So again, it's the overall structure of the page. And these can be customized just like I did the header.jsp. You copy it up there, make changes, and save the changes, and they're immediately available. So in this case, we've got a fairly different markup style, and that's okay. We can take this organization and integrate it into the SoftSlate layout files. Now, if you notice, there's a tiles insert tags here, and these simply are markers to include other templates. For example, this is where the header.jsp is included. So from that point, you're over here into this file. Okay. One thing to point out that kind of tricks people up is center layout in the default directory. All it does is include left layout. But it includes the local left layout here in the same default directory. So for the screens that use center layout, if you're customizing it, you want to just copy this up here. And if you're customizing left layout, you want to bring center layout along and just copy it up there. You don't even need to change it, but just so it includes left layout from the custom directory rather than left layout from the default XHTML directory. Hope that makes sense. If you're curious about which screens in SoftSlate use which layout files, that's a good question. There is a list of them. Here in our documentation, we have a whole section for designers, for doing design integration like we're talking about here. We talk about CSS, and we talk about creating a custom layout by customizing JSP templates. So that's kind of what I've been going over. But there's a section here customizing the core layout files, and you can see here they are: center layout, left layout, and layout. And if I can narrow this a little bit, you'll see the screens over here on the right that each of them use each of those layouts. So the center layout file is used by the home page, the welcome screen, about, contact, search, and cart item edit. And those are just screens where traditionally in our previous iterations, center layout had a right column and a left column. And these were screens where there was an appropriate amount of space where that would work. In our newest default set of templates, center layout just includes left layout. So there's only one column. There's only a left column by default currently. So that explains that. Also want to go in and show you the admin area. There are certain look and feel settings here that can just be done by a non-technical user in the admin area. And it just makes sense to be aware of them. There's a store logo upload. And if we uploaded a logo file, that would replace this piece of text with the image that's uploaded. There's also a notion of CSS themes. By default, it runs the basic theme. And the themes correspond to other directories under the CSS. So by default, base.css is included first for every theme. And then depending on your theme, it might include, for example, for Orange Crush, it might include orangecrush.css next. And regardless of which theme it is, custom.css is going to be included last. So you can override both the styles from base.css and orangecrush.css in your custom.css. So you can have full control. If you don't like the way the themes work or how that's set up, there's nothing to prevent you from overriding the links to those CSS files. And you do that with this HTML head.jsp. If you notice back in the layout, there's a tiles insert for the HTML head.jsp, and that's basically the content of the head tag. So inside here you have links to the base.css followed by, if there is a theme defined from the database setting that we saw, it'll include that theme's CSS style sheet. These are other dynamic styles that can be controlled from the admin area. And those are right here: general display settings, the font size, and some of the coloring. And so we thought it would be a good idea to have non-technical users be able to manipulate those things if they're doing something very basic. Back here, here's the print.css that only takes effect when you're printing, and then the custom.css. You're free to copy this file up to the custom directory and just do whatever you need to do. It could match the HTML design that you're starting with. And just a word of warning, base.css does have a lot of good stuff in it for many of the screens in SoftSlate, that you may not want to worry about. So it might make sense to try to keep as much of that as you possibly can, or even keep this include up here if you possibly can. The other thing to point out is that as upgrades come out, changes might happen to this file. So that file could get overwritten with an upgrade. So it maybe makes sense not to make changes to it directly. If you want to just tweak it, you could rename it and make tweaks to that and then change the reference here to it. That's another approach you could take. There's no best way to do it. You just kind of have to integrate it and see what works best. So another thing I wanted to point out that kind of helps with the development is if you're wondering what JSP template is this being rendered in, you could always view the source, and we do have comments at the beginning and end of every JSP file. So here here's the HTML head. Here's the header, and you can search for these comments in the source code, and that can really help you find out where exactly you need to make a change or which template you need to customize. And that's all I had to discuss. I hope that's helped, and thank you very much for watching. Hope it's been helpful.